gentleman right there.
Yes, my name is Atatrk, and I represent the Atatürk Society of America, the Youth Division. I have a question for Professor McCarthy. You're explaining the Ottoman Empire and the wars that were going on at that time. I was wondering what the United States involvement was, if there was any.
The United States did not become involved in the sense of sending troops or anything like that, except in the Greek War of Independence, so-called, when they did send, Americans did send money, supplies, and such to the Greeks. The first real strong American involvement, actually sending things over, comes at the end of the First World War. America has never been at war with Turkey, with the Ottoman Empire or with Turkey. But they did undoubtedly have a tremendous support, especially for the Armenians and to a lesser extent for the Greeks. I actually, a little plug here, I actually finished and will be published in the summer a book called The Turk in America, which is not about Americans doing things in Turkey, but about what Americans felt about Turks. And that's a whole different matter, I'm afraid. All I can say to you is it would be very hard to find a deeper prejudice than the one that was felt against Turks in the United States. But in terms of actually doing things in Turkey, I think on the whole the record of America was fairly good, especially after the Second World War. Before that time, there were some notable good points too. At the time of Admiral Bristol, for instance, Admiral Bristol was I don't think I would have liked him. I don't think I would have liked to have dinner with him. I surely wouldn't let him take care of my kids. But he was an honest man because he didn't like anybody very much. He once said that if you put a Turk and an Armenian and a Greek in a bag and shook them all up, you wouldn't know which one it was that came out. You know? He didn't like any of them much, which meant he was an honest man. He was probably the most honest of all the reporters of any of the Western powers at the time. Because he actually said, look, sure, Turks are killing Armenians, but Armenians are killing Turks. You know, that kind of thing. So, but I would say, generally, until the Second World War, in terms of what happens to Turkey, America isn't that important.
Let me also announce that after the symposium, you're all invited to the Turkish Center right across the street for a reception. So you're all invited for that right after the symposium. Yes, Dr. Matsar.
Thank you. My thanks to the Turkish Mission to the UN and the Istanbul University Association, Alumni Association.
Could you speak into a microphone?
I am. Thanks.
Is it working?
No.
Turn it on.
There you go.
Is it on now? Yes. Great. Sorry. I'll start again. My thanks to the Turkish Mission to the UN and to the Istanbul University Alumni Association. I'm with the Levin Institute, which is part of the State University of New York, and we're very pleased that we've been able to promote wonderful academic relationships between Turkey and SUNY, State University of New York. At the Levin Institute, we've been running some programs on Turkey the last 2 years, and I've noticed personally a tremendous interest in Turkey. It seems to be growing and growing, and sort of the example I use is 2 years ago I mentioned to someone in Greenwich, Connecticut, a Harvard law corporate lawyer, and I said I was doing a program on Turkey coming up, and he said, I think Turkey is the most important country nowadays geopolitically as well as the cultural influence. And so I guess my question is, how do we take the legacy of Ataturk that we've been talking about and increase the knowledge and the understanding of Turkey as well as the study of it within American universities and high schools and other educational opportunities?
I can say a little. There we go. I can say a little something. My colleagues can probably say more. One of the main things to do is simply to become involved in teacher training, not just at your level, which is a high level of people learning things, but in grade schools and high schools. Teachers' manuals, things like that, which I think are tremendously important. On the other side of that, you must also make sure that people police all the lies that are being told about Turks too, which is very important, especially in the schools. That's what I would stress. But there's something, it's a little off what you're saying, but something that bothers me quite a bit, and I want to state about the Turks. One of the main things that is true about Ataturk was that he was a person who was pragmatic, a person who was willing to change when change was necessary, a person who would do what had to be done to advance his basic principles. So no one could call Ataturk a religious man. But if you go to Bitlis, you will see on the wall of the main Jami in Bitlis a big sign that says, Ataturk prayed here. Which is true. And if you look at pictures from the Independence War, you won't just see Ataturk the general, but you will see Ataturk like this. You will see Ataturk who was willing to get along with people all over the place. A man who believed in trying to make the Turks come together as much as possible. Now, I see people a lot of times who think that Ataturk's principles were written in stone and that anything Ataturk said should always be followed. But if Ataturk was alive, he would say, take the basic principles, my 6 principles, and apply them to what's needed today. When I first went to work on what's today called the Armenian question in Istanbul, I was told by agents of the Turkish government that if I ever wrote about Armenians, I would be never allowed back in the country. Now, why was that the case? It was because in Ataturk's time it was forbidden. Well, the world has changed. And luckily the Turks have changed, otherwise I wouldn't be here today. Because I surely intended to write about Armenians. You see my point? My point is, it's not simply that Americans have to learn about Turks, but Turks also have to be willing to be a little fluid in these things too. A very good sign is the fact that people like Dr. Volkan, people like Andrew Mango, that these people have been willing to portray Ataturk, as we say, warts and all. That they've been willing to say that Ataturk was one of the greatest men who ever lived, which I think is absolutely true. But he was also a man. And he occasionally made the mistakes of a man. Now, it's really important to put it that way. And I probably have gotten way off your question, I'm afraid.
I'd like to answer that question too. When George Bush was president, he went to Turkey and talked to Ahmet Sezer and asked Ahmet Sezer ways to make Turkey as a model for Islam. So American president goes to Turkey and says to the Turks, you are the Turks, moderate Turks, modern Islam, which at that time I understood that Ahmet Sezer was, not that I give much credit to him, I'll tell you that later, was very upset, intellectually very upset. What we do is that we also need to look at ourselves as Turks. We are also doing things that we are not mentioning here. I heard this fantastic lecture by my friend on my left about Ataturk bringing arts to Turkey. We saw pictures of statues with women's breasts. But we don't talk today that in Turkey there are funny reports every day. That is, in certain town, people are busy thinking about how to take down a statue because the statue made of metal is showing a woman's breast. So things are changing also in Turkey. And as my old teacher used to say, we need to also examine ourselves in order to be more prepared about how the world looks at us. The tradition of Ataturk is fantastic, unbelievable, in such a short time, that Turkey developed a new identity. And just one example I want to give you, and I want to finish with it. We were talking today about Beypazarı. It's now they're making it very nice, and we go there, and wonderful people selling things and so on. All the ladies are covered. I'm not against their covering or not covering. But when you go to the museum in this town, which is looking at this marketplace, you see these ladies' mothers and grandmothers, pictures, with İsmet İnönü and all other people, and they're all uncovered, happy, showing their faces to the whole world. But their granddaughters are doing something else. So the question is, was your mother a bad woman? Was your grandmother was a bad woman who followed Ataturk's revolutions? So things are changing also in Turkey, and my suggestion in this kind of meetings, while we praise what was done in Turkey and this unbelievable miracle Ataturk prepared, we also need to find out how we can protect it. And so I just want to make a reference to that all of us in this room, whether everybody can think as they want, we have a responsibility to protect this modernization. And we talk about this or that, but we don't look at ourselves, we just bypass it. And it kills me. I go to Turkey and it kills me. And I'm somebody that I talk like this, but also I am not fighting with anybody, so people also listen to me. The people who are in government, they are also people and they have their ideas, but we need to talk about these things openly. That's my way of finishing.
I just have one wish that I have formed in Turkey. Our daughter was coming to visit us, and she saw a little clip on Istanbul, Good Morning America, about what Istanbul life is like. And she got all excited and started telling her friends. And then when I was in Turkey watching local television, I saw India come to Greece, and there's flashes of beautiful things, human beings, architecture, ruins, cuisine. If Turkey would just do some of that, where the public would see that it is an attractive society. It's got people that dress very differently. It just flashes of those kinds of commercials which only take 30 seconds. It won't get many Americans maybe to go over there, but they'll start to change the image. Because when I tell people Cappadocia, they say, wow, I mean, you can go there. Then you talk about the kind of food that Turkey can feed itself, and the kinds of food you can have. They go, wow. So those would be what? Commercials that are flashes, and the government could do that as part of the tourism, and it would change the image, I think.
Thank you. And the last comment, please.
Turkey is its own worst enemy when it comes to public relations, and when it comes to educating Americans as to what Turkey is all about. There seems to, unlike the Armenians, unlike other countries or nations, Turkey has zero or very little budget for public relations. This is true not just of the government. This is true of all the societies, Turkish societies of the diaspora. Very little money to change the image. That's one comment. Another comment, going back to the Armenians and World War I. The last ambassador, U.S. ambassador to Istanbul, Constantinople, was Henry Morgenthau Sr. Henry Morgenthau Sr. would become a wonderful subject for a psychiatrist to analyze posthumously. While he was ambassador, he became very, very, very concerned about the Armenian issue and wrote quite a few memoranda to Washington about that. He has since then written a number of books. His offsprings, a fourth generation, is now very active in the Armenian issue. Henry Morgenthau Sr. had very little time or patience to save fellow Jews from Hitler's practices and policies. And I have documented that. His son, Morgenthau Jr., became Secretary of the Treasury under Roosevelt since 33 till 45. His son, until 1943, had absolutely no interest in saving Jews. So what I would suggest is that a good psychoanalytical study is in order. By the way, there is at this very moment an exhibit at the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York, which I went to see. A lot of misinformation being made by a highly respected museum on the Morgenthaus. Well, there's a Morgenthau who is the chairman of the board of trustees of that museum. So that may be an indication as to why. But there's a lot of misinformation, and the Turkish community in New York should take a stand on it. I have done so in the New York Times and on a site called History News Network. But more should be done. And this, in a way, would expose some of the myths that have been created by Morgenthau Sr.
Thank you very much. Thank you for, I think we're out of time.
Thank you very much for all, and I would like to thank you all, the professor, for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.